on the News Channel 5 network. This is Inside Politics.
Hello, everyone. I'm News Channel 5's political analyst, Pat Nolan. Welcome to Inside Politics. As the Nashville community continues to find the best way to deal with our immigration issues, Davidson County Sheriff Daron Hall made national news this week, announcing he will no longer house detainees on behalf of federal ICE officials. It's one of many issues that the sheriff's been involved in the news lately, so we've invited him to join us on Inside Politics today. Sheriff Hall, welcome back to the program.
Thank you, Pat. Thanks for having me.
So what exactly did your office do for ICE, which the full name is the Federal Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency?
Yeah, you know, really appreciate the chance to explain this. I've had all kind of hate mail and all kind of cheerleaders that really neither one know exactly what we did. But for a number of years, I've been here 30 years or so at the Sheriff's Office. We have always had a contract to house people for the federal government because we have a federal courthouse here and many other reasons. Back in the Fate Thomas days, we had federal prisoners and we were overcrowded. We'd move the federal prisoners out, you know.
And you're still going to do the marshal service, is that
right? Right. And so that contract that allows you to house federal prisoners allows you to house a variety of types of federal prisoners. And so back in the days when I started, it was INS, eventually it became ICE. It's the same situation. But that contract allows us to house people. The city gets the reimbursement for that for those inmates.
So you don't get the money?
Never get a dime of that. It's always been back into the city coffers. And what's confused people, that I think is real important, is the contract that we ended just allows you to house people after they're through with their local responsibilities. If Pat Nolan's arrested tonight for whatever it is and he gets a 10-day sentence, those 10 days are served here, and at the end of the 10 days, ICE must come and pick you up. They can't stay here doing time.
How long have you been thinking about making this change?
You know, one of the fascinating things about it, my job, I think, is a pretty broad responsibility, but I spend an inordinate amount of my time trying to explain this little bitty piece of what we do.
Because you don't get a lot of ICE prisoners to have to take care of.
Right. It's less than 1% of the people ever booked in our jail. We book, 4,000 a month probably, or 3,000 a month, I guess. We're seeing about 11 of these people.
Was it getting more troublesome, or has it always sort of been a fly in the ointment?
Well, I've been around politics a little bit too in my life. My dad was in the city council. You have to run for office.
I know.
And one of the things that blew my mind was the recent Metro Council races and mayor races. There were some activist groups here in town who made getting rid of this less than 1% of the people contract the number one most important issue for them in this election. And so council candidates were signing pledges to end the contract.
Now the money, the people that you house for the state, those inmates, you get paid on a per diem rate for that as well, and that money doesn't come to your budget either. All that goes to the city's general fund.
It all goes to the city's general fund, and again, even this, a lot of the city council members that were really adamant to end this contract didn't understand that they were the ones receiving the money. And
so bottom line, it just got to be too much of a hassle for you, and so you decided to go ahead and move on from this?
It's not worth it to me. I don't benefit from it as an agency. It's not something we necessarily were begging and wanting to do. I think it's a responsible way to have handled it because the individual being booked is also wanted by the federal government. Until the federal government arrives, them staying here seemed like a responsible thing to do. I think now, with all the political climate and both sides of this issue are way off on some of their facts, we'd rather move on to something more significant than what we do every day.
Do sheriffs and other surrounding counties have similar contracts, and do they have similar problems and headaches about it?
You know, I think Nashville's a little bit unique because of the federal courthouse, because of the size of our operation. Of course, we're one of the largest jail systems in the state, and so there are other counties that have done it over the years. I'm unclear as to who's doing it today, but over the many years, I'm aware of other counties that contracted with the ICE and federal government to do it, but I'm not sure today who's doing it other than us.
So come December 1st, roughly how many prisoners do you expect you'll be giving back to ICE, and where will they go?
It's very few. It's about 11 people per month out of the 3,000 that are booked, and so those 11 people between now and the December time frame, we will work out with them and make sure they're transferred over. I want to make sure everybody understands, though, there's a state law that requires me to cooperate with ICE, and what that means is when ICE sends me a warrant and says they want Pat Nolan when you get released on your local charges.
I wish you'd quit arresting me, but go ahead.
I just want to make sure people can, they won't believe it, but they can at least relate to the incident. So the problem with the situation is they believe that we're no longer cooperating. I've had people, you won't believe some of the nasty stuff's been said and written the last couple of days, and people are saying, you're letting these people go, and that's not true. What's happening is they're turned over to ICE when they're through locally here. They just can't stay in the jail. They're not let go.
So that's what you mean. You say if you're required to by law, you'll do it, but otherwise you're not going to have a separate contract.
That's right. The contract was outside of the law, so we're following the law still. We're still going to cooperate. We're just not going to house them beyond their local time.
Now, your announcement to drop your ICE relationship has made national news all over the country. I've seen Associated Press reports. I've seen news TV stations, other places doing stories about it. Surprised? Overwhelmed? Maybe
I've been here. We've done a lot more significant things in our time, and we can't get anyone to talk about it. But yeah, my son sent me something. I think the leading Democratic national presidential candidate sent out something about it. We had Marsha Blackburn threatening, how bad we were, and so there's a lot of things.
So you're still caught in the middle. You've got Elizabeth Warren likes what you're doing. Marsha Blackburn does not.
It does not, and I have people probably who work for me who feel that same way. But I've received I have kind of a policy. I'll call you back if you call and complain. If you'll give me your number and at least talk through why we've done it. But it's hyper political, hypersensitive issue. Immigration is unfortunately just a difficult subject.
Senator Blackburn is introducing federal legislation to redefine the relationship between ICE and local officials, local sheriffs. She also is going to try to better incentivize it. If you got more money and it came to you, would you have a different idea about this? In other words, if you got money, you'd put up with the aggravation with it?
I'm not really interested in the money side of it. I really encourage Senator Blackburn and others, we need to get the immigration situation resolved, the clarity of it. That's the whole problem for everybody. And I support changing it and getting it fixed and hopefully, allowing accountability. I mean, one of the things that makes me frustrated is the criminal justice system by nature isn't pretty. It separates families and people. And so immigration takes that into a totally different realm, and we're trying to clear that up a little bit.
In reaction to this, Governor Bill Lee told reporters that he's not that concerned about it since it doesn't seem to have any direct impact on ICE. They have other places to put these inmates that they have. But he did sort of indicate perhaps if it had an impact, do you think, are you afraid he might invoke some of these sanctuary law sanctions against you or against the city?
Pat, what's funny about that, or at least over the last several months, I mean, one day I'll get threatening emails from the Republican legislative body members who passed the anti-sanctuary. Why are you violating the law? They weren't clear what we were doing.
So you're still between the devil and the deep blue sea on this.
Right, and I've got others going, well, you're too mean. I think I'm on the top 10 most hated people in the country on some list somewhere, and it's just, the reality of it is neither one of those sides care a whole lot about the facts, and so
you're in the middle of this ongoing culture war about this whole thing. You're also on the group that the mayor has put together, a task force that over the next 60 to 90 days is going to come up with recommendations for how the city ought to handle and relate to ICE and other immigration issues. You got any bright ideas for how to fix this?
I did not really appreciate what happened late in the Briley administration, and I really mean we had some probation officers who work for judges here who were kind of caught in the crosshairs of this subject, and I just felt like, number one, they don't make enough money to be criticized and kind of dragged through the mud over the subject of immigration. We need clarity on telling them what their job really is and isn't. What I appreciate about Mayor Cooper is once he got in office, he moved that executive order to the side. He's formed a group. I met with his group this week. It's very heavily influenced with activists and leaders of the immigrant community, and I think his goal, and I'm listening to the kind of the strategy of it, is to come up with some general policies for the metro government as a whole. How do you respond? There was an incident, very highly publicized in the school system recently. Now I come to find out that didn't happen, and so we owe the community, those both in the immigrant and the other, and we also owe our employees that work for the government. What are your expectations? And I think that's my hope, that coming out of his task force, we can at least clear up. You're not going to clear up the politics of it, but you can clear up what am I allowed to do as an employee, what am I not supposed to do.
Nashville Sheriff Daron Hall is our guest on Inside Politics. We've been talking about the ICE situation, other issues to talk about with the sheriff as well. We'll come back and talk about that after this break.